Welcome to This Explainer. We are diving straight into a gripping, ancient cold case today. We're talking about a massive cover-up, a deadly natural disaster, and a group of people known as the Gibeonites, who waited a very long time to finally get even. It's a fascinating look at how one broken promise can literally curse a whole nation, and the extreme, chilling lengths people will go to for payback. Now just imagine looking up at a sky that hasn't dropped a single drop of rain for 3 long, agonizing years. We're talking total devastation. Crops are failing left and right, the ground has completely turned to dust. Well, this is exactly what happened to ancient Israel back during King David's reign. The whole nation is starving to death, and back then, a 3-year famine wasn't just chalked up to bad weather. It was a giant, flashing warning sign that something was deeply, deeply wrong.
So King David looks at this and knows it isn't normal. He starts digging into it. He goes directly to God to ask, why is our land completely dry? Because David knows there just has to be some dark, hidden secret, some unaddressed wrong that brought all this suffering onto his people. He realizes the physical drought, that's just a symptom of a much more massive spiritual problem.
And the answer he gets is absolutely shocking. God actually reveals that the famine is a punishment for a violent cover-up. There's blood guilt on the previous king, King Saul. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it means Saul had secretly massacred a group of people called the Gibeonites, basically trying to wipe them off the map. This terrible crime left a deadly stain in the whole land, and the debt for all those murders had simply never been paid.
To really understand why this crime was just so bad, we need to know who the Gibeonites actually were. They weren't Israelites. They were locals who were supposed to be completely safe living there. Why? Well, because generations earlier, they had signed a bulletproof, legally binding peace treaty with Israel. They were promised absolute protection. But King Saul got swept up in this dangerous nationalist zeal and decided to slaughter them anyway. He literally tried to erase them entirely.
And honestly, here is the wildest part of the whole thing, the massive gap in time. 400 years before this famine even started, Israel swore an oath to protect the Gibeonites. 4 centuries. Then, decades before our current story, King Saul breaks that ancient promise and slaughters them. Fast forward to present day, 3 years into a brutal famine, and David is finally seeking justice. It really goes to show that God and the Gibeonites absolutely do not forget. Time does not just erase a debt.
Okay, so David knows he has to fix this, but he doesn't act like some untouchable king. Instead, he humbly calls the surviving Gibeonites to him. He approaches them and simply asks, "What can I do for you? How do I make this right?" He knows the starving land cannot heal until the Gibeonites feel the score is completely settled. It's fascinating because the power dynamic entirely flips here, right? It goes from the hunted to the ones holding all the cards.
Now this is where the story gets incredibly tense. David basically offers them a blank check. He's totally ready to pay them off with silver and gold to make things right. But the Gibeonites, they completely refuse. They explicitly say they do not want Saul's money. I mean, you really cannot put a price tag on a broken oath and the murder of your families. They didn't want a payout. They wanted blood, and they were finally ready to get even.
So instead of taking the cash, they issue this chilling demand. They tell David, the man who tried to destroy us, give us 7 of his male descendants. No way, right? They literally wanted to get even with the family of the very man who tried to wipe them out. Saul shed their blood, so they demanded the blood of his family in return. It was the ancient law of payback, a life for a life.
And let's be clear, their terms weren't just some random act of violence. This was highly calculated payback. First off, they wanted 7 descendants because the number 7 meant total completion in the ancient world. Second, they would publicly hang them to show absolutely everyone that justice was done. And third, maybe the most brutal detail of all, the execution had to happen in Gibeah, which was King Saul's own hometown. They were literally dropping the punishment right on the dead king's front lawn.
So David agrees because the blood debt just has to be paid. But he has to be incredibly careful here. He deliberately spares one of Saul's grandsons, Mephibosheth. Why? Because David had made his own sacred promise to protect him years ago. Think about that. In a story entirely about the deadly cost of broken promises, David makes absolutely sure he doesn't break his own. Instead, he finds 2 of Saul's other sons and 5 grandsons, and he hands them over to Gibeon.
The 7 men are handed over, and they're executed right at the start of the harvest. It was a grim, highly visible display of payback just left out on the mountain for all to see.
The Gibeonites, who had been hunted and quietly murdered in the shadows by Saul, were now making this loud, totally undeniable statement to the whole world. After all these years, they had finally gotten even.
And the result of this incredibly dark event, the rains actually return. Because the ancient debt is finally paid and the Gibeonites got even for that broken treaty, God responds. The skies open up, the land begins to heal, and that terrible 3-year famine finally comes to an end. It's wild to think about, but the natural world was only fixed after the moral wrong was made right.
So, why does this brutal ancient story matter to us right now? Well, there are a few big takeaways. First, promises matter. God expects us to keep our word, even if the promise is literally 400 years old. Second, you just can't bury injustice forever. Saul tried to secretly wipe out a minority group, but the truth eventually came out and demanded a reckoning. And third, real payback costs way more than money. You can't just write a check to fix the deep, deep damage or betrayal.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. The Gibeonites successfully got even. They forced a powerful nation to pay a horrific price in blood for a broken promise. But we really have to ask ourselves, is true justice about making peace, or is it really just about settling the score? It's a pretty heavy question about the extreme cost of accountability. Keep that in mind the next time you make a promise. Thanks for watching this explainer.